welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake Lamore, and welcome to the very first episode in our brand new spankin' studio here at Pathfinder. I'm really excited about this, that we finally got all of this laid out, the paint up, the acoustic foam is up. We got the desks in here and the mics, so it's really exciting. And I'm even more excited that the first person to break this new podcast studio in here at Kankakee Podcast and Pathfinder is Theodis Pace. Welcome to the podcast, Theodis.
Hey, Jake. Hey, man. So I'm privileged, man.
You really are.
I'm privileged, man. It's not often that I get the opportunity to be the first, man. I see the new paint. I can smell the paint, and I see that you got a little dust outside the door, though, man. You guys still got to get some of the dust up.
You know, I did vacuum before you came here. I vacuumed for you,
not
Theodis.
outside, not outside the
but
elevator.
I vacuumed this hallway. I vacuumed that hallway, and then I vacuumed in here a little bit. But yeah, you're right. I did.
But I feel privileged, and I really welcome this opportunity to talk about the things I'm involved in the community, the Kankakee County NAACP branch. We can talk about housing. And the other thing, and I know we talked about Mr. Olszewski recently being a former Eastside football player. But Jake, Monday, June 26th, Beckman Park was my 47th year of dealing with structural recreational opportunities and providing service to the youth of our community. And I'm a blessed man.
Wow, yeah. That's amazing. Congratulations,
Thank you.
Theodis, and thank you for your many years of service.
Appreciate it.
I mean, it's really, the Eastside Bulldogs has really made a name for itself over the years. It's really become a staple, and it's an organization.
Institution.
There yeah,
go,
that is really represented Kankakee all over the country.
Yes, sir.
Not just here locally in the region, but all over the place. You could tell me more about that, because you guys travel.
We travel. Oh yeah, but here's the key on how we collaborate with the mission of the NAACP, talking about equity, inclusion, diversity, academic standards, being well aware of the current events. And so with the collaboration of the NAACP, our youth council, Eastside Junior Football League, we deal with all those things. And if you think about the NAACP leading the charge, or better yet, the fight from police brutality to COVID-19 to voter suppression to the ruling of the Supreme Court most recent.
You really just put a bunch of things out there that I would like to get deeper into each one of those things, because those are all very key things that are happening.
Absolutely.
Not in just our area, but all over the United States and the world. But first, before we go even deeper into that, and thanks for bringing light on those things too. I want to learn more about you and how you came to Kankakee and where your story starts.
Well, I was started in Columbus, Georgia, a country boy from Columbus, Georgia. My family relocated to, let me deal with Columbus, Georgia. As a young man, Jake, I saw Jim Crow. I experienced Jim Crow. I experienced racism. I saw the colored and the white water fountain. I saw the cone heads, which would be the KKK, driving by. However, the elementary school that I attended was, sometime really growing up in that environment, I questioned, was integration really meant to be? Because the community where I grew up, the principals, even the young ladies, the custodians who worked in the kitchen, the custodians, all the teachers, everybody looked like me. I would walk 2 or 3 blocks from my home, and from the YMCA, the cafeterias, the restaurants, the barbershop, beauty shops, the movie theater, the bus company, the cab company, Jake, was all owned by blacks. Owned by blacks. So even as a second or third or fourth grader, I was deemed with the challenge of that I knew I was going to attend college. So my parents, so I got that early imprint about goals and objectives. And if you got to figure in the 50s, it was about you have to go to college, all right? My dad was from Tuskegee, Alabama, which I'm sure you know about.
Yes.
Tuskegee, the Tuskegee experiment. My mother was from Montgomery. So growing up, I had an inkling of Rosa Parks, the Montgomery boycott. All of that was going on. So my family, we moved to East Chicago, Indiana, which is 40, 50 minutes from here. So there at East Chicago Roosevelt High School, I flipped the script from having black mentors to a Hank Sawacki, Coach Bill Holzback. And then it was even academics. I played basketball, I ran track, football, all of those things. Then I had the opportunity to leave there, and I attended Lane College in Jackson, Tennessee. And there I go back to HBCU, so early imprinting, everything black, East Chicago, Indiana, where there's diversity. I mean, it was a melting pot.
Sure.
40 minutes east of here is a melting pot.
Yeah, you got a lot of middle class in that
you got
area,
everything.
right? Yeah.
So now I get to Jackson, Tennessee, and I'm somewhat back into the racial
segregated.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I'm at a historic black institution. But a George Thacker and all of the people there, Professor Jarman, all of that. So I've been lucky. So now I leave there, and guess what? So I get all of my my master's and everything else from Purdue University. So now I'm back in a white setting, but along the road, I was prepared to meet any obstacles, educationally, academically, and so here I've been a school administrator. I worked for government. Early on at Lane College, we were taught to give back into your community, and so I had an opportunity to read a story about Theodore Roosevelt. And one of the things he always said that what a man does for himself dies with him, but what a man does for his community live long after he's gone. So I pretty much have taken that challenge, and I can safely say all I've done was put something back in my community versus taking out, and I'm going to continue to do that. And that challenge of it, there's nothing like volunteering and not to look for something in return. But when Jake or Matt Olszewski comes back and say, Coach Pace, you remember, and you didn't think that, the player or the student or whoever wasn't listening, and they come back and you enlighten them and you made an impact on them by a particular statement. And that's when that's that check that is not monetarily, but you just impacted a person's life.
Yeah. I mean, just in the short time that I've known you, you've definitely inspired me I need to volunteer more in my community, because I see Theodis, he's doing all of these things, and I'm like, man, I need to be doing that because it looks great,
right.
And it must feel great too to just give back to your community. Not necessarily, you're not looking for something in return. You just want to make a difference.
But I've been quite lucky with my parents. My wife, who I recently got married, but I was married for over 32 years, and I lost my wife Dorothy in November of 2004, and I recently got married, but the Lord has blessed me because you can only run for public office. You can only volunteer. You can only buy so many gym shoes or all-purpose shoes for students and athletes, and your wife is, reconciling the checkbook, and she's asking you, well, what was this check written for? Well, I bought some kids some shoes. You paid some sign-up fees. You did this, and guess what? It's nothing wrong with paying it forward.
Yes,
that's what it's about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I, again, 47 years is a long time, and I've indicated to a number of young people that I cannot pass them my baton, but I can surely help light theirs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Something that I wanted to, and you kind of touched on this a little while ago when you were talking about your childhood in Georgia, but this was something I believe you talked about on the I'm Fine podcast with Eric Peterson and Brad Stozik. Shout out to the I'm Fine crew. You were talking about, and I never really thought about it in this light until you brought it up about segregation and finally breaking down that wall and saying, okay, we're going to integrate everyone. And I think, if I remember correctly, you said something along the lines of integration was the worst thing for the Black community, but it wasn't in the sense that people would think, oh, he's against it. It wasn't necessarily that. It was just saying that no one was prepared for that integration, so it just really kind of messed up the Black economy, right? It did. And absolutely. I would love to get your perspective on that.
And Jake, just last week, there was an article, that was in the Daily Journal, where it ranked Illinois something last in the nation regarding Black entrepreneurship or Black ownership of businesses. So again, growing up, and I still go back to Columbus, Georgia, 3 or 4 times a year, but the cab company, it was Black owned. So that means the owner of the cab company was receiving revenue because, if nothing else, Black folks was picking up the phone and catching the ride. The Liberty Theater, it's a historic site now, but Blacks was going to the Liberty Theater. So if you even look at the state of North Carolina, bus companies, along the line, everything was Black owned, and all of a sudden, so now I can go to Jake Lamore's restaurant because I wasn't able to before that. So now we converging, and so here we are. One of the major topics in this area, economic development, right? And so now the economic piece have been taken out of the Black community and has been transferred. And so now the Black cab company's closing because folks who was maybe denied riding in the white guy cab. So from an economic standpoint, integration, even to not saying there's Black, white teachers or anything like that, but 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, everybody, Mr. Egan, Mr. Jackson, they were Black male, and during that period of time, all it take was for that male to tell you about the do's and don'ts, and the don'ts is that you're going to turn my work in. You're not going to miss an assignment, and you won't get no drawback from a parent.
Yeah.
That's what, in today's society, we have left. Blacks don't have the startup funds to start a business, so they got to go to small business. Or here you got to go to EDCA and at Barbie Watson's office there for the city of Kankakee to deem grants and things of that nature. So when I made that comment, it's from an economic standpoint.
Yes.
Because the segregation piece was totally wrong. So it should have been fair play. So we're talking about affirmative action even back then because, Jake, there was a cafeteria, Davison. Oh, man, everybody flocked to Davison cafeteria. But, when I work, I used to tell some of my colleagues, I wish for one day in the 60s or the 50s, you would have experienced some of that, to go to the back door, get called boy. And another thing that have kept me strong, Allison Beasley, and I'm aware, I think Brian had Bill Young on.
Oh, Brian Prairie?
Yeah.
Leadership level up.
Dealing with leadership.
Yes.
Well, Bill knows me very well. So you might get 3 or 4 different sides of a Theodis Pace.
Yeah.
I can be aggressive. I don't feel I have to go to school board meeting, city council, county board meeting, and be on the open mic. Why? It's based on relationships. Anybody, the county board members, the aldermen, school board, I can talk to these people. It's only when Theodis Pace is going to be on the open mic is when he have exhausted all avenues.
When you've exhausted those efforts or to call up those people you have those relationships with.
So then the shit is on.
Yeah, then you're like, okay.
And I'm going to take the gloves off.
Yeah.
Most people call me Message Man. That's a nickname.
That's a good one.
That
I haven't heard that
was coined by
one.
Allison and Bill.
Okay.
Because when I'm coming, I'm bringing you a message because there's been something unfairly done to an individual or a group of people. And so we're trying to rectify it because guess what? I live here. Jake, I maintain that I'm probably one of the highest taxpayers in the city, maybe the county, because I'm a landlord. So if I'm a landlord and I'm paying taxes, I have a voice. And all I'm asking you to do is listen. And the worst thing is when you're meeting with a person and they don't listen, and I'm not conveying, let me make this clear. Majority of the time when I'm conveying something, it does not benefit me. It benefits a group of people, young folks, people who don't have a voice, the homeless. I have issues with some of the rules and regs on how the city might be dealing with the homeless, okay? And I clearly understand I live in Kankakee, so should all the homeless people converge on the city of Kankakee, or do Bourbonnais and Bradley and everybody, be a part of that? But again, it's about relationships. And I'm getting to the point where some of our lawmakers are not lawmakers. They should adhere to their duties and responsibility of providing a service to the people they represent. And that's why you run for public office. And I've done the Park District, I ran for mayor, I ran for council, alderman. I've done it, so I know the process. And it's in this day and time, you got to raise money to garner those individual votes. But I also know that some people might not want Theodis Pace to be downtown or wherever because I'm not going to be the typical person. I'm not a yes person. But at the same time, an individual like me who are viewed to have a relationship with Sheriff Downing or Jim Rowe or Andy Wheeler or Chris Curtis, well, in some form, parts of the community, I'm going to use this term, a Tom, meaning that I'm sort of in bed or my relationship with whites. It's about I have the relationship to impact our community in a positive way by having the relationship where I can dialogue with the individuals that are in, if we want to use the word, in office or in charge.
So let's look at the other side of that, though. Let's say you don't have these relationships.
You got to be a little radical then.
Yeah, but what is that? Why is it more important to have those relationships than just to be radical and have this kind of a one-sided approach?
Well, I can't, in my lifetime, I can never see a Montgomery boycott. I don't see individuals coming together to do something in a common goal, a common narrative for 300 and some days. As the president of NAACP, I go over here to Jewel, I get upset with the store manager, and I said, man, we're going to boycott you. All right, so what is a boycott? Or I get mad and I say, man, I'm going to boycott you till next year. And the media is there. They're going to say that certain person stated they're going to boycott for a year. A year that's 300 plus days, right?
Right.
Versus picking up the phone, starting with the manager, trying to build that bridge of understanding with him. Then you continue to go up the ladder to corporate to impact and effect change that way. The radical piece comes in when everybody just turned a deaf ear and not listening to you at all.
Yeah. I feel like you just offer a very unique perspective on this situation just because you were born into the segregated era and then you were coming up as a young adult in the integration.
Yeah, but I watched Dr. King.
Right.
I'm well aware of Reverend Sharpton.
Yeah.
I know Jesse Jackson. He's a fraternity brother. My fraternity is a fraternity where we promote to be progressive thinking, creative thinking. And all I'm just saying is sometimes you have to be able to be creative to impact change, to impact a young man's life, whether it's having that one-on-one conversation and say, man, so what you're thinking that you feel negative about, let me give you my history. I seen, you going on what you heard, I seen the Klansmen. I've seen the segregated South, the water fountains. I have my science book in there, Jake LaMore's name in it. It's already 5 years old. So the white books are being shipped to the black schools. But it was those teachers who was committed and passionate about providing black kids a qualitative education, and they had gone to historic black universities and college because they also were impacted by Jim Crow.
So what are the things that we're seeing right now in Kankakee County as far as the, racial inclusion, all those things that you were just talking about earlier? What are some of the things that have improved and things that still need to be improved?
Well, you can have a conversation with, which I've had, but it still goes back to your lawmakers. You and I live in the city, but you would think that your lawmakers are progressive and, individuals who think somewhat outside the box, that there's a project of $5 million, someone should be saying, what about some minority individuals receiving some benefit from a particular project? Okay, and be mindful now. I'm not the kind of person that just say, you have to be black. So the NAACP, every other month, we meet with all law enforcement, okay? That means from the village of Bourbonnais, Bradley, Kankakee, Mantino, our sheriff department, just to name a few, right? And we meet there and we're talking about building that bridge of the black community, black and brown community, and building that bridge because guess what? There's a lack of trust, particularly in the black community, because of what's going on nationally with young black men being shot by particularly white police officers. So it's our effort to ensure that something that happened in a Cleveland, Ohio, or Ferguson, Missouri does not happen here in Kankakee.
And what do you do to try to prevent those situations
in
those meetings?
Well, we have Donna Sample, who works for Option. We have about 53 individuals that make up the Kankakee County Crisis Response Team to meet any civil unrest that happened, that group of people, because social media is a dangerous thing. And a lot of times what you see on Facebook is not true. So if someone posts, Coach Pace shot by white officer, but nobody's asking what did Coach Pace do, you see, so somebody have to be able to rectify and make sure there's truth to the uprise, where individuals is all upset about things that's happening. So our response team investigate and involve themselves with Under Sheriff Chad Gessner and other people from the sheriff office and the relationship with the respective police department. Then we have the 10 shared principles because Jake and Theodis officers, our wives want us to come home. When we go the 2 to 10 shift, they want us home at about 10:45. They want to make sure we return. So guess what? We here again, the 10 shared principles is those 10 items is where we have been signed and have the relationship with all of the respective municipalities in Kankakee County and across the state of Illinois. So 10 shared principles: eliminate racial bias central entry examination, adopting approach that consider every aspect of an applicant background, supporting retention of low-income and first-generation students. So that goes back to what the Supreme Court just did with the Supreme Court, where they took away the student loans piece.
Yes.
But so the 10 shared principles is again about building that bridge between law enforcement and our respective communities. So the only way you can do that is improve the trust with police, law enforcement, and our respective communities, and have citizens and law enforcement to know how to de-escalate things. And so those are the two initiatives, the 10 shared principles and our response team. And I maintain today that the NAACP is probably, of Kankakee County, I should say, is probably one of the most diverse organizations in the county. And our response team is quite diverse, to meaning that we can impact the community if there was ever any civil uprise.
Right. A lot of people like myself, until recently, the last couple of years, I just thought the NAACP was, that's just black, only black people can be a part of it. That's all it is, blah, blah, blah. But it's actually, there's, like you said, there's a lot of diversity in that. And it's actually anyone can join.
Anyone can join. It's and it's not a lot of money. It's only $30 a year that we can that become a member. But we have committees such as Political Action, who put on our candidates forum. We have Education, Economic Development, our Youth Council, our Health Committee, and I want to shout out to Jeanette Jones and Debbie Case. Jeanette is a Director of Nursing, RN out at Shapiro. Debbie Case worked for St. Mary's. As of to date, they may be over 300 plus individuals that they have been involved in with CPR. Why CPR? What happened to Devin Hamlin, the cornerback for the Buffalo Bills? So we took that incident and turned it to something that we need to provide a service to make people more aware of how important CPR is. So, those are some of the things that we're doing.
Yeah, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about taking a negative situation, turning it into something positive. You know,
Right.
you take those national attention situations, headlines, and you say, okay, let's make sure that doesn't happen here. Let's do some get together, or let's do a training, or let's do a meeting, or a series of meetings, or these different events to educate people on how we can prevent these things.
You know, because again, crisis response team, and I want to make that clear, is committed to reducing crime, strengthening relationship between law enforcement and the community, and building and improving policies. And so once individuals are aware of that, they know. Case in point, our executive committee, individuals from our legal redress and political action committee is in the process now of meeting with the different shifts. Kankakee 62, 2 to 10, 10 to 6 shifts. So we're going to have members meeting with those different officers at the different shifts to establish that relationship. Because now officer knows you, I know the officer, and that only improves the relationship between officers at Mantino or St. Anne, Bradley, Bourbonnais, Kankakee, and our sheriff department.
So for an example, would it be, let's say an officer knows this person and there's a situation that comes up where maybe they can reach out to that person to get information? Is that kind of the idea behind that?
It's that we even have vests. You know, there's each member have a vest, response team, NAACP logo, and is that they're there and it's being worked out with our sheriff department between staffer and again under Sheriff Chad Gessner, where you can be recognized. What's your purpose of why you're there? And we can be able to diffuse whatever situation, incident that might be transpiring.
And are you finding that you're able to work well with all of these local law enforcement agencies, whether they're white or black or brown?
Because you know what? It starts at the top. If you have Mayor Curtis on speed dial, you should also have the chief of police on speed dial. And I want to make sure that the family to the young man last night who was shot over on North Park, but let me just show you how the relationship is. And with that, last night, the relationship is such that you have the chief of police at 1:44 this morning is given a report on 7/11 at 10:15. KPD responded to multiple shots fired. So he's making the NAACP aware of what transpired of shots fired, incident, and I just said, thanks, Chief, and praying for the family. So again, that's building the bridge because somebody else, because Jake said, no, I have this information. This is what currently have. Now, and then I also looked on Facebook earlier. Here you have the mayor of the city also posted, making the citizens aware what have transpired in the city. So Jake, I know where you live. I live on the west side, right? Whatever happened in Kankakee affects somebody in Mantino, directly or indirectly, because we're all here together. As a coach, I'm always saying there's no I in team. So as a county, we're all impacted by any negative piece that happened, whether it's in the city or village of Bradley or Bourbonnais or Mantino. That's how we have to look at things. It might impact you directly, but it impacts you in some ways.
You mentioned earlier systematic racism. Some people believe in it, some people don't. And I want to hear if someone comes up to you and they ask you what it is, or they ask you why it's important, or just simply explaining it, because I think that kind of can go over people's heads sometimes, and they don't necessarily.
Some of the rights that you have, I had not been bestowed upon to do. Affirmative action. So the like of me being able to be free, to have the same rights as others, would impact me in a totally different way than most of some of my white counterparts. So economically, that means I would not be able to garner the same wage as another person if I've already been discriminated against. So systemic racism is, I would say, it is quite long. And are we, in some of my conversations, even yesterday or earlier today, how are we going to close the gap on that? The Supreme Court is not helping us with the affirmative action. James Brown, in the, I guess, 60s or 70s, he had a song, and some of the lyrics was, just open up the door and I get it myself. So the systemic racism that I can't succeed because somebody's put up all the obstacles, but if they just open it, I can be able to get it myself, which means the racist part have prevented me from being equal, that I can be successful without obstacles and, being faced with the lack of equity and inclusion and diversity.
And that's where those things come into play. Right. That's why you're seeing more organizations focus on the equity of their company. They want to make sure that they've got a diverse pool of employees.
You have to have a diverse workforce to be able to really get a good product, because you want different ideas flowing all around you. And so that's one of the pieces. But and this is going to be crazy. But I think sometimes systemic racism works in a two-way street, because a lot of times we're looking at from a perspective from a white perspective. Then we have to look at it. How have Theodis Pace ever contributed to systemic racism? You see, most people don't. I mean, all the things that we do, it has to be looked at from a perspective of how honest are we to have that talk. And I stated earlier, most of us, I don't have a problem, but most people don't want to talk about race. Or Jake gonna say, well, Theodis, don't hold me accountable for my great-granddad. I know you didn't have anything to do with it, but it happened, and don't count me for something that my granddad did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're saying that needs to be let go of, or
I mean, I'm not going to blame you for something someone else did.
Yeah.
But it should help educate yourself to see people for what they are, meaning fairness.
And I like that you pointed out too that it's not just what do like, I'm white. What does the white community need to do? But also, what does the Black community need to do for the white people? Right? It needs to be
It has to be a dialogue.
Yeah.
Because again, I live here.
Right.
I've been in the Kiwanis, the JCs. I joined those organizations because, again, it's about you can have those relationships with people other than, if most of the time, if I walk into a meeting and Stevie Hunter, Alderman Carl Brown, or Perry Irvin, Alderman Steve, Reggie Jones, I might not go sit with them. I might go somewhere and sit opposite them, because I talk to those guys every day anyway. But guess what? I don't talk to you every day, Jake. So guess what? We can make a difference, because at the same time, Matt Jr., yourself, and I know Matt Sr. over at People's Bank there, I can pick up a phone and have a heck of a conversation with Matt, we don't talk every day. And guess what else I know? Matt and I are not going to think alike. And so guess what? So we can mediate, come together on the change of something where we see things differently. But the common thing is where we can come together. So you got 10 issues. Are you going to agree on all of them? No. Brothers not going to agree on everything.
Oh, sure.
So, but it's about even having the dialogue is a plus, because it's that relationship that you have. You can pick up the phone. Let's talk. How are we going to address this? My friends, we just could have a heck of a disagreement last night. But guess what? 6, 7, 8 o'clock the next morning, hey, man, let's go to breakfast. That was yesterday.
Yeah.
How are we going to solve the problem? Even though we disagreed. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan in Bear Country. But I like Franco Harris, Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah.
I'm a Steelers fan. So, I might not care too much for Green Bay, but I'm a Steelers fan.
Mm-hmm.
And so are we going to totally disagree? You're a Bear fan, and I'm a Steeler? No, I'm going to go to the Bears game, but I'm expecting you to go to the Steelers game with me. So I'm a Cubby fan.
Yeah, well, and that's what I love, and I'm very grateful that you wound up in Kankakee and stayed for all these years, because I feel like you've been such an important bridge yourself bridging between all communities, not just the white and the black, but all races and communities in Kankakee County. I just feel like it's been super important to have you here to help kind of realize, hey, we all have common goals. Let's
Jake,
work together.
I'm going to share something with you. And if I'm going to be sincere about this, and it's somewhat been on my heart, but if you track the history of following Dr. King, before his assassination, Dr. King was changing, meaning he was also becoming somewhat radical. If you follow some of his speeches, and I'm sort of at a point of my legacy here, and I still believe my approach have been successful, but I think sometimes you might have to change your game plan to get individuals' attention, particularly those ones who are impacting those individuals who the NAACP or the Eastside Junior Football League or our youth council are just dealing with our youth and the voiceless in our community. And individuals are not doing what they're doing. So do you approach, do you change the game plan? I do. Third quarter, we're going to have to come out with a different offense, or let's make some adjustments with our defense. And I just think in 2023, we can give our people in Kankakee a little more, particularly our school districts. And I just think we can give our students, we might have all the resources, but are we actually dotting the I and really we're truly crossing the T and truly providing a quality of education? Are we providing equity? Are we providing inclusion, diversity in our workforce, our police department? And I'm going to go back to, because that was one of the piece. I clearly understand regarding law enforcement, we gave 2 scholarships out this year, particularly those individuals that was at the Career Center who was in law enforcement, because we're trying to build that bridge, and there's a lack of people of color want to be police officers. So how do you do that? You either grow your own, you go out to the Career Center, and you put your resources there to put more people in your respective community who look like us. That's what you have to do. And so you have to do that. Make people aware that, and so I can't criticize Chief Jake, because he's not hiring black folks as in law enforcement because guess what? The pool.
There's none there.
And you ready? Here's another one. I have some heck of conversations. How come Jake didn't hire anybody? Well, the first question, how many people applied?
Yeah.
Let's just be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, being an NAACP president is not an easy job because you're getting called out. Some people, and you stated it, have a misconception of the NAACP. Most of them just think it's black. We only deal with complaints. But we deal with health department, health committee, chronic diseases, AIDS, high blood pressure. We can just go on down the line. Our initiative, which making people more aware of CPR, economic development, political action. You host candidates forum to enlighten the community on the respective candidates who you should vote for. Economic development. You can go small business. You can go to the city economic development agency, apply for funds. There's webinars to help black folks become owners of their respective business. So I just gone from health, education, political action, economic development, housing. We have a relationship, and I guess I can name the financial institution.
Yeah.
But we have a heck of a relationship with Maryland State Bank to enhance first-time home buyers, how to build your credit. I mean, financial literacy, even for our youth council, how you can budget your funds, all of that. It's just not about complaints and discrimination.
I'm glad you pointed that out because that was definitely a question I was going to ask is what other misconceptions do people have about the NAACP? And you just listed them all out there.
All of them impact their community.
Right. It's well-rounded. It's not just give me a complaint, I'll take care of it. It's much more than, it's making sure those complaints don't happen is what it should be, or trying to prevent them.
You're trying to be proactive.
Yeah, right. Proactive instead of reactive.
You can pick up the phone, Sheriff Downey, or they pick up the phone and make you aware of something transpiring that you can indulge yourself in to prevent it from happening.
Yeah, because you are open to having that conversation,
that dialogue
with them,
right?
And they're open to talk. It's as you said, two-way street.
But guess what?
Yeah,
and some of those conversations could be where my voice is a little more vocal. Because now I'm trying to make a point versus we're sitting there trying to be somewhat civil. Yeah. And that's why I'm saying sometimes you have to change your game plan because I'm getting some, man, I never seen Jake respond like that. Well, Jake is serious about this particular issue more than the one last week.
Well, and the fact that you are recognizing that, hey, we need to change our approach a little bit or our game plan and tweak it a little bit because it's not working as well as it was a year ago or however long it was. So, and the fact that you recognize that is super important, and I feel like that's the only way.
Because I just maintain that the quality of life I live here, the Riverwalk, it's going to be a plus. But we got to bring other individuals here in the city into the county, and I'm well aware because there's a housing shortage. How do we get people to move to Kankakee? How do we get developers to come and want to bring their companies and build homes and condos? Ready? Workforce, education. You got to have a viable workforce, and to have a viable workforce, you got to have a very good schools.
And I know that,
and amenities. We have the river,
right?
And
and I mean
parks,
right? And you've been working closely with Kankakee Community College and all kinds of different programs that the low-income people can sign up for, so they can get right into the workforce and they can make a decent wage.
We just met with Mid-America Carpenters Union. we have 5 slots that we're looking for individuals, particularly, individuals look like me, and I guess, part of the affirmative action that we want to get an apprenticeship to be a carpenter. And I'm talking about building houses and all of those things. You can be able to make that $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 and feed your family. Relationship with Dr. Boyd and KCC, with the diesel program, truck driving, repair a 18-wheeler in that diesel engine. Those are the things, and unlike what I indicated earlier growing up in the South, and my dad is saying, you're going to go to Savannah State, you're going to go to Fort Valley or wherever, Tuskegee. It's unlike a young person, man, woman, young lady, do not have to go to college, a 4-year institution, to feed their families. You can have as an array of skills, principles that they can be able to do, computer science, diesel, mechanics, all of those things, IT. And so the time have shifted, and so we have to shift with the times. How are we going to be able to make our kids successful where they do not become a part of the criminal justice system?
Yeah, that's the key right there.
Right.
Well, I know, Theodis, we could go on forever and ever.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things to talk about between just yourself, the NAACP here in Kankakee, Eastside Bulldogs. Is there anything else you want to let people know about yourself or the NAACP before we wrap up?
I'm looking for some volunteer coaches for football.
There you go.
And if some people got some young people who want to play football ages 5 through 14, they can definitely get in touch with me or come down to Beckman Park Monday through Thursday from 5 to 7. Our youth council meets every fourth Monday, 3rd floor of the library at 5 o'clock. And we're doing an array of things with our youth. We're planning on doing a couple of, the simple word would be field trips, but they are exposure type trips where we want to educate and have our students make them aware of their environment. Chicago, even in 2023, you'll be surprised, have some young people really been in a motel room, meaning have they stayed overnight? Have they been in the swimming pool? Have they been to the Afro-American Museum in D.C.? Have they rode that charter bus? Have they been on Delta, United American, or Southwest to fly there? Do they know how to use a fork and a knife? You see?
Yeah, that's simple, huh? Where they don't.
Do you know how to really use a fork and knife?
Yeah.
Do you open the door for a young lady? Those are a lot of things that we're missing. Do you pull the chair out for the young lady?
It's true. I mean, simple gestures make big impacts. They really do.
And so that's my other name. That's the crazy guy. And all I'm trying to do is teach the young man or the young lady, because all of those things, the simple piece of using that fork and knife to open the door for a young lady, to pull a chair, to say, yes, Mr. Jake, no, Mr. Lamore. Those are real simple things. And guess what? It's about something that we like, that we're not teaching individuals. And guess what? It's a simple word. RESPEC, respect.
Aretha Franklin sang it best, right?
Yeah.
So
those are the things. And it's simple. And sometimes we have to go back to first. Not third base. Sometimes we have to go to first. Matter of fact, go back home plate, and say, let's run those bases again. And now I'm being the Little League coach, because there's a way you run the bases.
Yeah.
Life is no different.
That's true.
And so in the game of life, Friday night game with my family back in the day when they was kids, along that game of life, there's obstacles. Game of Monopoly. Go to jail. You got to pay some rent, taxes. It's the game of life.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we all start in that game of life at the same starting space.
Yeah. It's sometimes we're just not at some of the same spaces in between.
So now with that comes to a topic, systemic racism, discrimination, the lack of equity or inclusion. And you asked me what can some of the things, my inner circle, we always think that most people don't include the thinking of how we think, meaning blacks. But with the NAACP, we're always thinking about inclusion and diversity. You know, how the committee will look, how is our panel for the candidates forum. We can't have all black folks.
No.
you see? So we automatic, thinking, how about diversity? And you can look at a lot. And some of our institutions, they take a picture and it's all white folks there.
Mm-hmm.
So is it good or bad, or is it just that they have not made an assertive effort to change that narrative?
Yeah.
And so my answer to you, can we change the narrative to be inclusive, or thinking how would things be if everything was above board and everybody had the same opportunity?
And before you go too, how can people look up the NAACP or get a hold of you? Our
website is www.KankakeeCountyBranchNAACP.org. 815-932-0858 is our office number. Our office is located at 657 East Court Street, Suite 205. And our email address is easy, NAACP3035@AOL.com.
Okay.
And we do a little Twitter, but those are the key things. And I got to get with the person that you sent.
Yes, Brian.
Because, we're going to improve on our marketing and want to be a little more visible to get our message, our initiative out into the community. Because, again, from our perspective, we also want to be inclusive.
Yeah.
We mean inclusive that we want to share our initiative that people is least made aware of what's transpiring in our community, particularly with the NAACP.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, Theodis, this has been a pleasure.
Oh man, invite me back next week. We can make. But I tell you what, I actually watched Bill at his podcast, and I was listening to him, and I got, matter of fact, I might have to call him up because he made a comment in his podcast that I made an impact on him.
Oh, see?
Man.
Like I said, you've made an impact on so many different people.
Yeah.
So.
And that was leadership. Yeah. You'll be surprised, the little things that you pick up from individuals.
Yeah.
But then that's, again, what makes America great and our community stronger about unity and improving upon the quality of life.
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Theodis.
Appreciate it.
This river